All right, welcome everybody to Distraction Management and Digital Detox. We're going to go ahead and dive in very quickly. My name's Paul Unger. I am a recovering attorney from Columbus, Ohio. I like to run, cook, restore homes in my spare time. My passion is teaching lawyers how to use technology and time management. I like to focus on automating your practice using a variety of software tools. I have a couple books. One that's very relevant to today is Tame the Digital Chaos. And one of the topics that we're going to focus on in that book is distraction management and digital detox. That brings us to today. I am a geek here to talk to you about that topic. So let's dive in. We have a lot to cover. We live in crazy times. There's no question about it. You open up your newspaper, you turn on the TV, you look at your smartphone and go to social media. It's a bit insane. You've heard terms like infomania, information overload. According to this study, which is actually a couple years old, we receive the equivalent of 174 newspapers of data per day. That is a lot. I mean, that's not, that's an enormous problem. It's having a major impact on our ability to focus, on our productivity, and our mental health, our anxiety and stress and so forth. It's too much. It's just too much information. So what this seminar is about is rethinking about the way our lives intersect with technology, and perhaps, not even perhaps, do, right? We need to inject more balance into our life. According to this study, there's been a 30% increase in anxiety and stress and psychological consults in universities and schools. It's a little, the science and the data is a little unclear as to whether or not this is caused by social media, caused exclusively by social media and technology and the smartphone, as opposed to some other things too. So I want to be very clear that I think that there's some data to suggest that it's not all social media's fault, it's not all technology's fault, but to be fair, there are a lot of studies that show that it is having a negative impact on adolescents, on adults, on our ability to focus and anxiety. So the bottom line is the jury's still out. However, the data is suggesting that it is having a negative impact, and it's not a small one. We live in crazy times as legal professionals. The average American worker gets interrupted every 4 to 5. I've seen studies that say 6 to 7 minutes. The legal professional gets interrupted every 2 to 3 minutes. We live in a hair on fire world, and that problem is probably not going away anytime soon. And the problem's getting worse. It's not getting any better. Those number of interruptions have a negative impact on our ability to get back into a project that we're working on, whether it be billable, non-billable, telephone calls, whatever tasks they may be. So we have seen in the medical literature some new terminology appear, and I want to talk about that for a moment. We have all heard of ADD. ADD is a neurological disorder with a genetic component. It can be aggravated by environmental factors. ADT, attention deficit trait, is 100% environmentally induced. And in today's world, that environmental factor is technology. It is why very smart people underperform. It's why you underperform. It's why the people we hire underperform. It is also what's associated with oftentimes as the cause of stress and anxiety in some of those cases that I cited in the study before. Microsoft did studies back in 2007, and they measured how long it took an individual to return back to work they were performing following an electronic-based interruption. They found it took 15 minutes. So I know what some of you are thinking, like, well, wait a minute, if I get interrupted every 2 or 3 minutes and it takes me 15 minutes to return back to the work I'm performing, how do I get anything done? And that is the problem. That is exactly the problem. They did more studies, and they found that 40% of the people who were interrupted never returned back to the task they were performing, and the harder the task, the more likely it was they would never return. Now, what's fascinating is 15 minutes used to be the magic number, and that's how long it took for decades for us to return back to the work they were performing. And in 2016, really 15, 16, 17, new studies started to emerge that show that that number has increased, and it is now 23. And a lot of interesting studies out there to talk about why and theorize why it's worse. Are we doing long-term damage to our brains? Are we rewiring our brains? What is clear is that the problem is not getting any better, it is getting worse. The cause of it is still a little unclear. The data and the verdict is not out on that. But the harder the task, the more likely it is that we don't return back to that work. So I want to stop and pause and think about that for a moment. If you are a person that in large part does a lot of 10-minute tasks, a lot of 15-minute tasks, or administrative things, and you work with somebody that does project work, billable work, that work on projects that require a lot of analysis and thinking, and you are scheduling things for that person, you should consult with that person, have a conversation, have a discussion about when to schedule those type of things. Because just putting, for instance, like a half-hour appointment on somebody's calendar in the middle of the day, even though they're working on a project and the whole day, and you think, oh gosh, it's only a half hour, that's not a major interruption. It is. The placement of that appointment is an enormous interruption and can take chunks of hours away from that person's productivity, because you put that at 1 o'clock on a Wednesday. So that makes an impact. So it's important that you have discussions with your people, with your team, about scheduling those type of things, maybe back to back, with a little bit of buffer in between each appointment, but at the beginning of the day or the end of the day, or maybe they prefer it in the middle of the day over around the lunch hour. But those are important discussions to have. Let's talk about internal interruptions, what you do to sabotage your own day. 21, the number of times the average American worker checks Facebook during the course of the day. 74, the average number of times the American worker checks email. So we take an email curiosity break 74 times during the course of the day. That's what you do to yourself. That's what you do to sabotage your day. You're there working, trying to work on a project, and you keep popping over to email 74 times. And what's in email? Bombs, fires, right? So that's what you're doing to sabotage your own day. 80, the number of times we check our smartphone during the course of the day. And 564, the number of times we switch tasks on our computer every single day. And here's the moral of that story. Every time we switch tasks, it makes an enormous impact on our energy levels, because we use a special type of glucose in our brain that we're expending in epic amounts today versus what we used to do in, let's just say, the 80s and the 90s, before technology really kicked in. These interruptions in our multitasking is having an impact on our performance, and it's making us appear dumb. If you don't believe me, King's College 2005, they administered an IQ test on 3 groups of people. The first group had no interruptions. The second group were fed electronic-based interruptions, but we'll just say they were otherwise normal. And the third group they were not fed electronic-based interruptions, but they were stoned on marijuana. The first group scored the best, but the second group scored actually 3 points lower than the third group that was stoned on marijuana. So the second group that were fed electronic-based interruptions actually did worse than the people who were stoned on marijuana. So if you can't get from your chair to your door without looking at your phone, you might have an addiction. And that addiction is a source of the distraction, right? So I want to talk about that and the cause of that. Now, you have if you've studied addiction, you know about dopamine. Dopamine is a highly addictive chemical. Our body releases it every time we see our name in a Facebook post or a tweet or a social media post, or we get a text message. So it's really important that we realize that there's a chemical process that's contributing to our behavior. Dopamine can be good too. When we're very task-driven, you've gotten up on a Saturday, you've written out your errand list, you go out to the pet store, you go out in the car, you get your list, and you cross it off, and then you're headed down to the grocery store, but you see the bank, and you're like, oh yeah, I gotta stop at the bank, and you didn't have that on your list, so you go to the bank, you come back out, you get your list out, and since the bank's not on the list, what do? Well, we write it down, then we cross it off. And why, right? It's done. You don't even show that list to anybody, but we want credit for it. So that's dopamine, that feeling that we get when we cross off something off our task list, right? So that could be really good. But again, it's really important that we realize that there's a chemical process that is contributing to this behavior. All right. So how do we combat attention deficit trait? We do it on really 4 fronts. I'm going to combine the first 2, workplace and personal health, attention management skills. We're going to focus on those 2 or 3 things right there here in this webinar. And then the third is a time, task, and email management methodology, which we're not going to tackle today. But that is your traditional book that you pull off the shelf at Barnes and Noble on time management, like David Allen, Getting Things Done, Covey, Michael Linenberger, and that type of methodology. We have other webinars that talk about that, which I would highly encourage you to attend. So at the end of the day, the first 2 are really talking about digital detox and getting focus, right? And the third is that methodology to stay organized. Right, and they all feed on each other, right? Because if we're not organized, then we can't do things like respond to email quickly. So then emails get stuck in our inbox because we delay. So all of these things are very important to look at holistically. So on the workplace and personal health front, the workplace organizational health, I would highly recommend 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. He's kind of the godfather of organizational health. I would start there. There's also Simon Sinek. What we're trying to focus on here is having a healthy place, a positive place to work where we reduce drama, where people understand their mission, they understand how to prioritize without having to go to somebody every 10 minutes and ask them, how should I prioritize? But understanding what is expected of them and trust within the organization, right? So these 2 are masters at organizational health, and I would strongly recommend those as resources. On a personal health front, we have to eat well, we have to exercise, we have to sleep too, right? Lack of sleep is an enormous cause of so many problems with anxiety, stress, depression, impaired focus, aging, paranoia, and then the one I learned recently, blood pressure, has an enormous impact on blood pressure. So there are many things that we need to do for our physical health and our mental health. Right, and technology. We're going to focus on technology here, on how we can detox ourselves from technology to improve some of these things. Right. So talk about kind of the pure detox, digital detox side of things. But all of these things make a major impact, have a major impact on our ability to focus, especially sleep. There's a reason I dedicated a slide to just talk about that. That has a big impact. All right, so what steps? What steps should we take? So first, looking at digital detox, one fantastic book, and there's a number of books out there, but one book that is I think an authority on this and is just very well written, very easy to read, is Off. And it's written by Tanya Gooden, and I want to focus on a couple things that she talks about in her book. And I would recommend that you read her book or get a dedicated book on just digital detox, because there are a number of different plans and ways to handle this. I want to emphasize, though, that we're not talking about a pure detox from technology, like just cutting everything off. I think we can all agree that that's pretty much impossible. You might be able to do that over a weekend on occasion, right? But a pure, cutoff of all technology just isn't realistic. We need to figure out a way where we're balancing this, right? Because the rest of the year, okay, we've got to balance it. And that's what we're really trying to do. So what is it that we're trying to do? Some things like screen scheduling. We set a rule for ourselves: all devices off after 9 p.m. Okay? Just as an example, you adjust the number, you adjust the time. Perhaps no email after 7 p.m., right? We give our brains a break. Phone-free food, right? When we eat lunch, when we eat dinner, right? When we eat breakfast, or maybe you say, all right, for breakfast, I'm going to work at my desk and eat oatmeal, and I'm going to do email. And that's okay, but phone-free food for lunch and also for dinner, right? What we're doing ultimately here is we're setting boundaries. And track your phone time, right? So there's screen time on the iPhone. The Android device allows you to do this as well. Track your phone time and try to get those numbers down. Get back to nature, right? So gardening, hiking, plant something, right? What we're trying to do is create a break where we're quieting the chaos from that technology. A phone-free walk at lunch, right? Try to go off the grid for a day, right? Or for a half a day, if a day is completely unrealistic due to maybe, your workload at this particular time in your life. And find your built-in GPS, right? So try to go back, remember the day when we had to rely on our sense of direction, and remember directions to get to a place by looking at things like the sun and landmarks when we drive, as opposed to looking at a tiny 3-inch screen as we're driving. At the end of the day, all of these things are really talking about boundaries. We're creating boundaries and rules with ourselves, so that, for instance, we don't have our phone at dinner. We don't look at our phone past 8 p.m., right? Those type of things. And we're giving ourselves that quiet, the chaos time, right? So our brains can rejuvenate and we can get that energy back. During the course of the day, don't operate from email. In other words, let me say it another way. Email is not your daily roadmap. It is not your plan. And so many of us come in every single day, and we just maximize our email, and that becomes our roadmap for the day, instead of having an actual plan. We need to have an actual plan. Studies clearly show that when we have a roadmap, when we have a plan, we are far less likely to be distracted, and we can be laser focused. Maybe not every day, but a lot more focused, right, on most days. So what does that look like? It's easy for me to say have a roadmap, but practically, what does that mean? Well, I'm a big fan of the daily planning paper-based journals. To have a daily plan on your computer screen, I think I think it's a mistake, because we don't have 5 monitors. So you're probably going to dedicate one whole monitor for your roadmap, and you can't have it up all day because you're using your monitors for other important things like comparing documents, right? And so that means that you minimize your plan. And if you minimize your plan, it's out of sight, out of mind. So I like to have a paper-based plan, whether it's an index card or it's a journal like this, okay? So there's the Best Self Journal, Panda makes one, Focus makes one. I made my own. I call it the Tame the Digital Chaos TDC Daily Roadmap Planner. And so this is, and I'll make this available to you in the slides. I'll give you a whole page. You can actually run copies, and you could try this out. This is what it looks like. So you come in, you make you dedicate a 5-minute commitment in the morning to plan your day, or the night before to plan for the next day. And you identify first 3 to 5 things, that's what we see in the priorities, that will define that day as a success. So today is a success, in other words, if I get these 3 things done, okay? And then over on the right, we time block our entire day in 30-minute increments. And so even though you may have things on your calendar already, what you're going to do is you're going to consult your calendar, your task list, you're going to skim your email, and you are going to map out your day in 30-minute increments. And you're not going to be able to follow that to the T every single day, but it's a roadmap. It is a roadmap. And so that's next to your keyboard. And as you work through the day, you will, and you get the urge to do something or jump into email when you shouldn't, okay, or, engage in some debate on social media about gun control. And you think, oh, no, you know what? These are the 3 things I got to get done. I've only gotten 2 done, and I really need to focus. And this is my plan. I'm going to stick to my plan. There's a little area for notes and then another area for grateful thoughts. But have a roadmap. The data, the science clearly shows that when we have a roadmap, we are far more likely to be focused and manage those distractions, right? We keep those distractions in check. It's not enough to say that you're going to stop multitasking, right? You need to practice single tasking, like you practice your golf swing, like you practice piano, like you practice anything you want to get good at. You practice single tasking, which means you minimize your email and you look at your email at more deliberate times. Like I look at email 5 times a day, or some of you it might have to be 10, okay, but it's not 74. I think we can all agree on that. We clear off our desk, we file things away, and so the only thing on our desk are things that are relevant to the project or the task that we're working on at that moment, but we practice single tasking. Learn to say no, right? Now I know that's impossible for some people, especially young associates at firms where we never said no to our mentors, right? We want to get good footing, and we want to get a good place and position in a firm or an organization, and so we always tend to say yes. So we need to learn to say no or have boundaries, right? Have boundaries about, for instance, as lawyers, we get asked all the time to serve on as volunteers on boards and committees. So when the next time somebody asks you, you say, you know what, I would love to do that, but I'm serving on 3 right now, or 2, and that's my maximum. That's my maximum. I'd say that I set a rule in my life that I am only going to serve on 2 boards at one time. Otherwise, I'm not doing a good job, and I'm going to do a disservice to the board and a disservice to me and my clients. So, but please ask me again in 2 years. I would love to be able to help. Okay, so set healthy boundaries. Turn off Outlook notifications. You know what these are. Every single time an email arrives, it does 4 things, right? It plays a sound. It briefly changes a mouse pointer, and on, right? Every single time an email arrives. Instead, create an Outlook rule for those special people in your life, so that, those special clients. So you get a notification for, an email from these 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 important people, but you don't have a notification or an interruption for everybody in the world. So, and turn off those notifications on your phone. Here are the directions on how to do that on an Android and an iPhone. I'll give you these slides. Remember, I talked about screen time already. You can track your time. You can actually block yourself out of Facebook during the hours of 8 to 5 and do those sorts of things. So both phone ecosystems allow you to do that. Pomodoro is a fantastic way to actually practice single tasking. This is, I'm gonna distill this down to about 30 seconds of what Pomodoro is. You single task for 25 minutes. That's the 25-minute tomato timer. So you single task for 25 minutes, and then you take a 5-minute break. And during that 5-minute break, you quiet the chaos. So you get a glass of water, you go do some deep breathing. Some people do mindfulness, meditation. I would just step out of your workspace. You can call it whatever you want, but you quiet the chaos. If you don't know, if you're interested in mindfulness and meditation, but you don't know how to do it, I would strongly recommend any one of these 4 apps: Headspace, Calm, Buddhify, and Breathe. They're all fantastic. They all have free trials, and they're guided meditation, guided mindfulness apps. So give those a try. Organize your email. Get your email under control. It is really important that you're able to find answers to questions very easily. And oftentimes we save things in our own subfolders in Outlook where no one else in the world has access to those emails. And then we waste time and we run around like a chicken with its head cut off because we don't have our emails organized. Now you can use practice management tools for that. Like the genre software like Clio and Rocket Matter, Amicus Attorney Time Matters, Practice Master, Centerbase, those type of programs. They have email management. Document management has a little bit stronger, actually not a little bit, a lot of bit stronger email management. And so those are the programs like WorldDocs, NetDocs, OpenText, and iManage. And just as an example, when I have an email, let's say here from Baron, instead of dragging it and dropping it over into a subfolder over here on the left where no one else would have access, okay, that's like putting a piece of correspondence in a desk drawer and locking it. No one else has access to it. Instead, we can use this predictive coding panel. I just select his email, and then I can say, yeah, that belongs in the Knoxville bar matter, okay, or the Internet for Lawyers matter. And then all I have to do at this point is hit file, and it's filed away. When I hit Debbie, here, see this prediction panel all changes, and then I get a different set of matters that I can pick. So, and then it ends up in a central filing folder for that client matter, and everybody has access to it. So it's just easy, right? And when we send emails, it's the same way. We can send and file all in one step. Morning huddles. Morning huddles are key. They're so important. It's a lost art. We used to do it all the time. Then technology came about. We stopped doing it. And so I call it the 60-second lightning round, where each person has a minute. And let's say you have 5 people on your team. It's a 5-minute meeting. Everybody recites what they have on their calendar today, what they have coming up this week, and we move on. It increases communication. It increases understanding about what's on others' calendars, so we're not interrupting them, and it eliminates the need to go ask questions for people, because we can do that in our lightning round on our huddle, and we can say, well, gosh, I know that Greg has a big project, and I could check in with him tomorrow instead of today. So those are all very important things. The final thing I want to talk about is office drama and communication. 70% of communication is body language and tone, and we have a lot of misunderstandings that result from electronic-based interruption. So when you're mad or you're passionate about a topic, or somebody says something in an email or a text message that triggers you, it's really important that you stop and take a deep breath and pick up the phone and have a conversation with that person. Don't send the email. Don't draft the email, right? Harry Truman said, never kick a fresh turd on a hot day. Don't even start drafting that email. Just pick up the phone or go down the hall and build a relationship. Case in point, we'll do a little exercise to finish this off. I want you to emphasize the word that's highlighted in the sentence. I didn't steal his book. 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 I didn't steal his book, right? So 5 different interpretations depending on what side of the bed they woke up on. We can't control that. What we can control is how we choose to communicate with that person. We talk faster anyway, right? Most of us type 40 to 50 words a minute. We text only 15, but we speak 150. So we're far, but we can get so much more done, and we can avoid that misunderstanding, and then we can send that follow-up email or that CYA email. Okay, that concludes all the topics I wanted to talk about today. I want to thank you all very much for attending today's webinar. Please, please, please look out for our time management and email management and task management webinars. They all are related to this one. They're all interconnected. And again, thank you all very much.
Great. Thank you, Paul. I just love this topic and I can't wait to try out your suggestions. Thank you so much for spending time with us. Great job. And thanks to all of you for attending. As a little thank you gift, a little holiday gift of sorts, I'm excited to be sending all of you a link to download one of Paul's most popular ebooks, Forget Your To-Do List. It's a great one, so watch for that. And if you are intrigued by Paul's presentation this afternoon and want to learn more about digital detox and ditching the distractions, or if you just have some lingering questions, I encourage you to take advantage of our free 30-minute consultation. This is your chance to speak with one of our experts at Affinity and get those nagging questions answered. Just reply to the follow-up email I'm about to send and I'll do the rest. As always, I hope you'll join us again soon. We have some great sessions scheduled that you won't want to miss. Just jump onto affinityconsulting.com/webinars for all the details. Please do share your feedback with us on the survey that follows. Thanks, everyone, and happy holidays.